Okay, if you can hear me, Chairman Ledyard, are you in the meeting? Muted? Ask to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. We're ready to start the meeting if you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order.
All right, we'll call the meeting of the Litchfield Park Board of Adjustment to order. If everybody agrees, I think, can we just skip the Pledge of Allegiance rather than have people online doing that? I think I'd rather just move on to business unless anyone objects. No objection. We'll move on to business.
Objection.
Item 3, public hearing variance ZA 20-05 230 East Cercado Lane. Is there a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Chairman and board members. Give me 1 second. My own report's out of order. I need to start with Cercado Lane. I'm going to share my screen. Is my audio clear for everybody that's attending?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just making sure. All right, thank you. All right, so this will help when I can share as we go. Give me 1 second. Okay, so our first item on tonight's Board of Adjustment agenda is a variance request. The applicant's requesting a 4-foot side yard setback encroachment for a proposed attached garage to an existing residence. The proposal is to reduce the side yard setback from 15 feet to 11 feet. You can see the snippet of the partial elevation here embedded in the staff report. I recognize that when I pull from blackline drawings, it can be quite light, but hopefully some of you guys can see it. For the board members, I know you have drawings in your packets, but for those at home, hopefully you can read this. So the applicants come forward. They were in front of you on August 6th, just a couple months ago or so. And at that time, we had a discussion regarding the project. There was couple concerns. One was that it appeared that the project was not having just a design review board request, but perhaps a variance request, which was indeed the case. And so that's why they're here tonight with a Board of Adjustment application. Now, the second part is based on the floor plan that had been submitted by the applicant. They specifically noted something as unique as a kennel inside the house, which was a concern from a land use perspective because it would infer that the design review board drawings might be condoning a land use that's not allowed in a residential district. If somebody were to maintain pets and, you know, their crates or something like that, that's one thing. But when you use the word kennel, it infers a commercial kennel. So we wanted to make sure that that was taken care of. And they've since removed the term. You can see it's scratched out on the report. It says storage. So we don't really have a land use perspective issue in regards to the use of the kennel. So the focus for this application tonight is specifically just to reduce the side yard setback from 4 feet to 11 feet. Now, the board members certainly are aware that there's 4 conditions that need to be met in order for support for a variance to be given. And so staff has gone through per state statute conditions A, B, C, and D. A, that special circumstances or conditions apply to the land, building, or use referred to in the application which do not apply to the properties in the district, but there's special circumstances that were not created by the owner or the applicant. Authorization of the variance is necessary for preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights, and that the authorization of the variance wouldn't be detrimental to the neighboring properties. These are difficult to get. Variances they need to be proven. They're not given because they're just requested. It's not just a formality to get to where you want to go. So we have to look very specifically at the property. And in this property, there's two things that stand out that do make it unique, and a third, which is a little bit less. But one, we've dealt with this before in land use cases in Litchfield Park, is that we have a unique code requirement that homes on corner lots are required to meet more or less two front building setbacks. You're required to meet the relatively large front setback of 35 feet along Cercado, and then on this case, they're also required to meet that huge setback along Castano. So there's really no opportunity for them, even though they have street access off of Castano, to put a garage extension on that side of the house. The second thing that's unique about this house that wasn't caused by the current owner was that when it was originally built, the architect at the time, I imagine in conjunction with the prospective owner, spun the house at an angle, perhaps to take advantage of having some nice curb appeal, have the architecture of the home present itself to more than just the street frontage along Cercado, but it's spun so you can see it on Castano. And so they kind of created a pinch point on the east side of the lot. So that said, it was my finding that there are special circumstances that apply to this particular parcel that set it differently from other parcels. One, if they didn't have the 35-foot street setback side, they may have been able to provide a larger setback on the east. And also, if the property hadn't been spun, if you were to rotate the house that you see on the screen and tilt it so that it's facing straight forward to Cercado, there clearly would have been enough room for them to put a reasonable garage addition on the side of the house. And in this case, we've got a bit of a pinch point. They have a unique configuration, but they made it work. That said, I found that A and B could reasonably be met. C, is a little sometimes harder to authorize, but is it necessary for them to get a garage extension for preservation of enjoyment of substantial property rights? And looking at the homes along the street, the relative size of the homes and the size of the garages in relative proportion to the homes themselves, what they're asking for in terms of the garage addition is not unreasonable, considering the size of the home and the size of the property. So I think it's reasonable to say for preservation and enjoyment of property rights, we could grant the variance from item C. And D, I'm not aware at this time that we have anybody in opposition to the project. 4 feet is a pretty minor request in the context of the development standards of the entire lot. So it's not a big ask. And I don't know that there would be any material detrimental impacts to the neighborhood. So that said, I could confidently say that I believe items A, B, C, and D, the findings have been met, that those conditions have been met. And that said, we would be recommending approval of the variance, subject to the exhibits provided by the applicant.
Okay. Is the applicant here? Are they online?
Yes, I'm sorry. I couldn't figure out how to unmute it. Robert Copeland, I'm the owner of 230 East Cercado Lane.
Thank you, sir. You've heard they've heard the staff report. This is your opportunity to add anything that you would like for us to know.
No, I think that pretty much covers everything. Looking forward to having the opportunity to have that additional garage for sure for our property, but yeah, I think they covered it well, and yeah, I would be excited to get it approved and get moving forward on it.
Okay. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for the applicant or for Mr. Stanks?
Just one question: if that's the minimum encroachment that can be done. In other words, can you tighten the garage door any less to make the encroachment even less? Or if this is the minimum that you need in order to fit a garage door in?
If may I, Mr. Chairman, may I speak? So this is
Yes,
Robert
go
Copeland.
ahead.
Sorry. So what we found was, in speaking with our the architect and engineers on this project, that they felt like if we could keep that side. They're worried about the shear strength on the front side of that garage. So even if we looked at even changing it to masonry, if we could narrow the side on either side of the garage door down to get that, and we found that that's the most optimal shear strength to be able to keep the structural integrity of the garage, and that's why we held those dimensions. So for the constructability of it, that was the most optimal side. So obviously we could keep it smaller, but the smaller we get it, it starts encroaching the garage door butts, the openers, and then you really start hindering the ability to open doors in the garage. So if you don't have enough space on either side of the door to be able to actually open and close the door, it won't do me any good to have a garage if I can't get out of my vehicle when it pulls into it. Because if you notice, it goes back at an angle, so it starts to really get into some pinch points there as you go back front to back and pull in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So because the house is set at that cant, so to speak, from the frontage, it really creates a pinch point or a narrowing of the garage as you go in from front to back. And the width of the opening, as well as the side of the width, both structurally and as well as where that point narrows as it gets to the existing structure, that was about as tight as we could get it. Because I looked at saying, hey, can we only encroach a foot or 2 foot? Can I go to a smaller door? And it kept kind of coming back to that same pinch point. The smaller door just narrowed it up to the point where I wouldn't even be able to pull a vehicle in at that point without getting a larger encroachment deeper into the lot, if that makes sense. So we mirrored the encroachment 3 feet, and we just mirrored the property line so it gets narrow back there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do any of the commissioners have any
Yes, I have a
questions?
question, Commissioner. I think it was our last month's meeting or the month before. I'm just trying to figure out what the difference is between this one and that one, because we did not, we weren't able to approve the last one. I'm just trying to make sure we're consistent. And Jason, does that recollect the previous one that we weren't able to approve?
So
Yeah, that I would, if I may, Commissioner O'Brien. I'm sorry, I'm reading your name backwards. Sorry, Connor. I would suggest that the document's been cleaned up. There was a lot of ambiguity when we had the documents last time. There was handwritten notes, and it was a design review board application. So the design review board doesn't have the purview to approve the variance. So we've opened the public hearing. This is the Board of Adjustment meeting. So you're able to review this item as a variance application.
No, I'm sorry, Jason. Let me re-explain. That we had another homeowner that was going for a variance to put a garage in their home, and it didn't meet the requirements, and it was a similar situation. So I just, for consistency purposes, just want to make sure that.
Oh, I think if I may, maybe not to go too far off topic, but in terms of just the reference point, I do understand what you're saying, Commissioner O'Connor. Another, again, let me go back to fulfilling the findings for item A, and that there's not a unique, interesting circumstance about this lot. And so in this case, this is a corner lot, and the home is spun on an angle. So we could reasonably find that there's a unique circumstance not created by the owner, so that findings A and B would be met. The other one was a perfectly rectangular shaped lot, and the development pattern of the home was largely consistent with every other home on the block. But that one, so you didn't have a unique circumstance, and that one, someone had just built in a perfectly good garage, turned it to livable, and now they wanted to tack on a garage on the side. This one's a little bit different. So it's been evaluated slightly differently because of the hardship issue with the unique situation on this property. But that's just certainly staff's position, may not be agreed to.
Excuse me, Chairman, if I may too, the other application was for a front yard variance. So a variance to encroach into the front yard setback rather than the side yard setback.
Good. Thank you for that clarification. I just wanted to, double check.
All right. Thank you. Are there any other questions of Mr. Sanks or the applicant? If not, can we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Excuse me, Chair, we need to check if there are any public comments. And
That's
I do
correct.
have a public comment that was sent to me
Okay,
who wrote in favor of the variance. And that's from John Rayner.
okay. Is Mr. Rayner here, or is that simply a written approval?
It was a written comment received via email. Too late
Okay.
to put in the packet.
Okay, but we have it on the record now, and that email will be included in the record.
We're just checking to see if there's anyone else in the meeting that wishes to speak at this time.
Hello?
No. Hello, is there someone who wishes to speak?
Yeah, Bob Derry.
I'm sorry, would you state your name again?
Bob Derry.
Oh, okay, hi.
Go ahead,
And
Mr. Dale.
I'd like to also support the request for this variance. I think all the points that you've made tonight are appropriate. And I think in this case, it is a well-deserved approval.
Thank you, Mr. Derry.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else wish to speak?
No, we're not showing anyone else wishing
Okay.
to speak.
If not, unless one of the commissioners has anything further, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor of closing the hearing, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? Hearing none, the ayes have it, and the motion passes to close the hearing. We'll now move on to consideration of the next item, which is to consider the variance request itself. No, we're not ready to go to the, we're still on the Cercado one, but now we need to vote on it. Okay.
Okay.
Is there any discussion concerning this particular application by the commission?
I would like to make a comment, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Although I agree with the staff finding that there's a special circumstance, being that the home was sited at an angle. I'm just wondering, I guess I don't really necessarily agree with the finding that being on a corner lot is a special circumstance, and I just wanted to state that for the record, because I think there are many houses that have that corner lot and have the double setback, and so I just wanted to state that.
Okay. Any other comments by any of the other commissioners? Okay, hearing none, are we at a point where someone would like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that for the 230 East Cercado Lane, the request for a variance to go to 11 feet of setback on the east side of the property be approved.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, I'm not hearing a second to that motion. So that motion is not approved. Would someone like to make another motion?
No. It's a tough call because to give a variance to a side yard setback of these neighbors, I don't know. That's why I was kind of asking if you could tighten it up a bit. And I don't have a dimension on the garage door. I know you could get extra storage there within the setback, the required setback. I don't know if you can get a full vehicle.
Pam, was one of the people that spoke the adjacent neighbor? Do we know?
I don't have an address, but I don't think so. He said he lives in the same area.
So we have not heard from the adjacent neighbor that we know of.
Correct.
Commissioner O'Connor, Robert Copeland here. I met with the neighbor and spoke to them, and they told me they were not in opposition, that they were in favor of it. But I mean, obviously they didn't do anything in writing. But I met with them before I even submitted it, just out of sheer politeness. I would never submit anything like that to encroach the neighbor without discussing with them in detail prior to submitting it. So prior to doing so, I spoke with them and told them what I was thinking about doing and went through it all with them. And they were like, yeah, no problem whatsoever. And then John Rayner, bless his heart, he lives in the same spot I do, but one street to the south of me. So he's on the corner as well.
Well, we're at kind of an impasse in the sense that the motion to approve died for a lack of a second. No one has made a motion to deny, but that isn't necessarily required. So I guess other than making our record more clearly, if we move on to the next item, there would have been no motion to approve the variance that was approved. So by definition, the variant it would fail, and we would move on. Our record would be clear if someone made a motion to deny, if that was the consensus.
Just with this particular property, if I may, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, with this particular house being built in 1972 and a previous owner enclosing the carport, if I can re-explain maybe some of the problems it has, is it does not have a full 2-car garage. So I've got a 5,000 square foot under roof home with a 1.5-car garage. So, so the reason I'm asking is not because of anything other than literally the garage is wide enough. My wife drives a smaller SUV and a golf cart, and I can't even put a bicycle in it. So the width of the existing garage is less than a standard 2-car garage. So really, I've got a home with a 1.5-car garage in a neighborhood where most of the properties have 3 and even some cases 4 and even 5-car garages. So it's really hurting the ability to be able to have a functional household. I'm not doing it for resale. Obviously, I live there; it's my home. I'll raise my grandkids there if I can. But the garage is narrow. It's got, you know, if it helps, you know, to have somebody come out and look at it, you can see the glulam beam where the old carport was, because they left that inside the garage. So it's it's tiny. It is not a standard 2-car garage. It's got a 16-foot wide garage door, and the masonry corners that turn on either side are less than 10 inches. So we're talking a width of a garage that's under 17, 17'6". And you just can't put 2 cars in it. I don't even care if they're 2 Priuses. You can't put 2 cars in it. So we really have a structure that has 1.5-car garage. And that would be so what I'm asking for is really to get it to a 2-car for all intents and purposes. 2-car and a golf cart is really what it'll end up getting me.
I just noticed on the dimensions, the written dimensions say 10'7". Is that just to the edge of the sidewall?
I'm sorry, ma'am. What was that again?
The written dimensions on the site plan say 10'7", and we were considering it an 11-foot. So was that just because it looks like it's to the center line of the masonry?
Yes, ma'am.
Did that change, or is that what you're asking?
No, we'll make it as tight as we can possibly get it, as far as when we get into the engineering. And if I can encroach it only 2 foot, obviously I'll only do it 2 foot. I'm just looking to, so we're just looking to try to get it structurally in a position to where it's stable and that it'll stay standing. So the architect felt like that the dimensions he showed was the most optimal to be able to maintain the structural integrity of the new structure. But you know, if when we get into the engineering and we figure out if we can figure a tighter way to make it smaller, I'll only encroach the setback. There's a benefit to not encroaching it for me because I have an RV gate on that side of the house too. So from the front curb appeal, next to the garage, there's an existing RV gate there. So the more room I can keep on that side, it's a benefit to me as well, because there's a pair of gates there for me to be able to put stuff in and out of the backyard. So my goal would be to try to keep as much of that there as possible and not lose the access, because I don't know if you can see from the aerial, the prior homeowner put a concrete pad that pulls through that RV gate down the backyard. So it gives me the ability to put a low trailer or anything that doesn't stick above that low fence back there. So I would like to keep that as much as I possibly can. So my goal is to only encroach it as much, the bare minimum I have to, so that I can keep as much space on the side there to be able to keep the gate.
Does that change anybody's mind? I'll propose another motion to approve the variance. Although the plans say 10'7", I'd prefer to call it 11.
Is there a second to Commissioner her motion to approve the variance?
I will second council member, but anyway, Charnetsky's proposal.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the variance as stated by Commissioner Charnetsky. All those in favor say aye.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, before
Yes,
we vote. Jason, do you have any examples of other examples of variances similar to this that we've approved?
Board of Adjustment commissioners, the side yard setbacks have been generally looked at. I wouldn't call it with favor, but with a bit more understanding than other setback encroachments. Rear yard and side yard, if the conditions are proper with all of the codes and ordinances that have been adopted since those buildings were initially built 40 or 50 years ago. We've been more permissive with our support for variances in those cases. It's the front yard setbacks and that are oftentimes the biggest concern because their immediate visual impact on the streetscape and our overall concern of the impact on the neighborhood. Side yard setbacks with small encroachments because of a unique circumstance, we've often been supportive of those.
So Jason, I don't want to be unfair to you because I don't expect you to have a memory to remember everything, but we don't have any specific examples that we can.
Oh, you're not being unfair to me. The nice thing about being on Zoom is I have access to all of my public files. So if I needed to toggle really quickly for a reference, I could give you an idea that I would say in the last 2 years, we've approved half a dozen side yard setback encroachments easily. If that helps, I'm not sure if it does, but for any number of reasons, we've approved side yard setback encroachments.
Okay. Any other comments or questions by anyone? Okay, hearing none, right now on the floor, we have a motion and a second to approve the variance. Commissioner Charnetsky made the motion. Commissioner Romack seconded. So at this point, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 I hear 3 ayes. All those opposed say nay. I hear 3 ayes and I hear no nays. Are the others not voting?
I think we all spoke at the same time.
Okay, I only heard 3.
You can raise hands if you want.
Aye.
Okay, so Brian O'Connor, so it's unanimously approved then. I just want to make sure because I didn't hear any negatives, but I didn't hear all the positives. So, okay. Sounds like the variance passed.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Now we're going to move on to our next item, which is a building height variance. At 268 Laguna Drive West. Mr. Sanks, can you give us the staff report?
Certainly, thank you, Chair. The request tonight for 268 Laguna Drive West is a variance from the zoning ordinance residential building height requirement to allow a 2-story home where only a single-story homes are allowed. Based on the owner's narrative provided for the project, they're looking at expanding their livable area of their home by adding a 2nd floor to the residence to accommodate their growing household. Their justification for the request is that there's 2-story homes next door nearby. I believe they're referring to the townhome that you can see on the left of the Google Street View image that I provided. Well, we certainly understand their concern and wish to grow the size of their home to accommodate their household. But again, we come back to the 4 findings that are required for statutory review of the findings A, B, C, and D. Really, instead of repeating the whole thing over again, I'll just make quick reference to them. We need to first get to A and B, which are kind of intrinsically related. That 1, we can identify that there's a special circumstance, and 2, that special circumstance was not created by the owner or the applicant. So we have to look at the property. So let me go back up here. The property and its surrounding properties, especially to the north along Laguna Drive, are all quite similar. There are townhomes immediately south and kind of across the street in your packet. So you may see from what the applicant provided that there's a different residential type, that you have attached housing nearby that is 2 stories. The zoning for this project was specific that there was a 1-story restriction on the property if it wasn't approved differently. So really, they're going all the way back to the original zoning of the property and asking to add a 2nd floor to their home, where really actually none of the other homes in the neighborhood have 2nd floors that are North Laguna Drive. They happen to be the last lot in a series of all of the lots that you can see in the street view in front of you And then immediately adjacent to them is the different housing type where they have second floors. So
Jason, if I may,
I'm still presenting
no trouble.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'll finish my report and then the chair will entertain additional dialogue. So that's the first concern that we run into is there something special about this parcel compared to the other parcels on the street? You know, we talked about in other cases, you know, we're the usual go-tos in terms of understanding that. And I failed to see from the aerial, I don't have an image shown here, but if you look at the parcel aerial and you look at all of the homes stretching down as far as you can see on Laguna Drive, they all kind of have generally similar footprints. They're all single story. They're all kind of built the same, and all the lots are basically the same. So there wasn't anything particularly special about this lot that would justify going a variance. The second part was, if I can't make A work, we can't make B work because it's not even applicable if we couldn't establish a special circumstance. C, you know, would it be reasonable enjoyment or preservation of substantial property rights if we is it required to grant the variance so that they could have that? But really, all of the other homes have the same or similar property rights all along Laguna Drive North. So they're sharing the same similar property rights with all of the others. And D, will it have a negative impact on the neighborhood? That, you know, perhaps is more debatable. You know, would having a second floor on this particular home have a negative impact on the neighborhood when there's two-story townhomes next door? Our understanding is that we do have a letter in opposition from a neighbor that's concerned about change in the neighborhood. From a general Litchfield Park perspective on the single-story restriction that, you know, kind of pervades most of in the park portion of Litchfield Park, it would be certainly a step out of the norm to set a precedent of going against the single story restriction that exists throughout the park. It would be something new, and it would set a precedent that would perhaps become the groundwork for any other home that's single story where it's restricted to propose, let's go 2 floors up. Property values are going up. It's perhaps more economically feasible to go up than to do something else. But that said, that's just speculation. Getting back to A and B, I'm having trouble meeting the variance as much as we are sympathetic to the needs of this homeowner or any other homeowner that has similar needs. I just had trouble making A, B, and C work. And like I said, I believe that D would be somewhat subjective in this instance. So, and even so, you have to make them all be met. So that said, we're not able to support the variance request. Certainly the board may have differing opinions on this, but that's staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Sanks. Sir, I'm gonna call on you in just a moment, but I have a question for Mr. Sanks. Mr. Sanks, in that particular neighborhood, and by that I am referring to not just Laguna Drive West, but the other. There are many townhomes or of these homes that look exactly like the applicants, but they're also, I don't see that it's necessarily as rare as you indicated. There are several that front on Old Litchfield Road that are 2-story. There's some other ones sprinkled around through the area. So my question, I don't know whether to be to you or to Pam, there are a number of, here and there are a number of 2-stories in there, and it looks to me like the drawings submitted by the applicant are similar to those other ones. So I know there are other ones there. So my question is of Pam, were those other ones, did those others all come through at some point over the years on variance requests? Or how did we end up with these other 2-story townhomes? And I'm not talking about the ones immediately adjacent to the applicant. I'm talking about some other ones that are similar appearing to his, but that do have a second story.
When the area was built out, if you look at the old deed restrictions, 2 stories were allowed. However, our zoning code now only allows 2 stories if it was approved at the time of development. So when this townhome was built, when this home was built, it was not built with the second story, so therefore, according to our current code, it's not allowed to have the 2 stories. The homes that you're seeing that have 2 stories were, I'm guessing, built that way in their original development. I am not aware in my years with the city that there have been any variances granted to allow a 2-story in this area.
Okay, because one of the questions I had is, over the years that I've, not just this issue, but there have been many cases where people were coming forth wanting to have setbacks changed, for example, to go back to what it was originally under the county before the city zoning code came in. And in those cases, there are a number on record where at least the setbacks were approved. So anyway, that answered my question, because I wasn't sure from the wording of the ordinance, the way you put it, as to what was there. But apparently, at the time it was built out, or at least initially, 2 stories were allowed. But our city zoning, when we came on board, apparently changed that. So, okay. Let me recognize the applicant now. Sir, would you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Ross Rossano.
And sir, you've heard the staff report, and this is your opportunity to comment on that and offer any other evidence or testimony that you want to present on your application.
So, thank you. There are a few other 2-story homes. If you go to the north, I think about 5 lots. I know there's another one, and I think there's one off of Old Litchfield a little further north. And they are not townhomes. They are single family. It's up there on the left.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of, I mean, was my intent to do something similar to, what was existing.
Okay.
Yeah, I've lived here in the house for about 5 years now, and I, just love the area, and I'd like to stay. As the family's growing, my wife is pregnant with our second child, which is awesome, but we're just kind of running out of room.
Okay.
So, ideally, we'd like to stay, and and the remodel would help that immensely.
Right. Okay. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for the applicant or Mr. Sanks?
I actually lived in that neighborhood a long time ago, but I do know that some of those are 2-story. They are kind of just sprinkled in there. The one right on the corner of West and Laguna West, and then there's some on Old Litchfield, and then there's, I think, 2 that are not only adjacent to them but on the other side of the street facing the lake are also 2-story. So I think it's not totally out of character. I do have kind of 2 minds of it, because it's kind of, we start granting variances, then all of a sudden they're all gonna start popping up like popcorn. So I worry about because they're so tight in there, that when you go 2-story, you reduce the sunlight to your neighbor to the north by quite a bit. So that's why I'm thinking 2 ways about this.
If you go to the rendering that I provided in the application, in considering the 0 lot line, my intent was to, if you chop the house up into thirds, kind of going east and west, the northernmost third would not be built on, trying to preserve the 0 lot line and not create that alleyway sense.
Just one moment, I can share that exhibit, just if you don't mind. I'm just pulling it up right now, okay?
That'd be great.
Sir, is this the correct exhibit?
Yes, that is. And I did speak with the neighbor, actually several of the neighbors to the south, and they were in favor of me being able to go ahead with this. I had a conversation yesterday with Douglas, the neighbor to the north, who I thought I saw on here. I don't know if he wants to say anything. To be honest, he wasn't in favor. He didn't say anything good or bad about it. Yeah, I think he was just inquiring.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Commissioner Romack.
Thank you. In this area, and I've owned a couple of these. This was built back in the, I think in the 60s, I would say.
Yes, that is correct.
Early 60s probably, and we're in the process of completely gutting and remodeling one right now, and I can only encourage people to do additions and changes and upgrades and remodels. Brian, as you know, you're upgrading a lot of houses, and that takes in adding more space and adding elevations and things that are only improve the value not only of your property, but the value. Everybody's rising tide raises all boats. Everybody benefits from this. And I can only say that I encourage this kind of development. I think it fits into the community, into the neighborhood. It's not out of character for anyone around there. And I would say, good on you. Keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Romack. Are there any other
Yeah,
comments?
you brought me up, so I feel like I need to say something. I agree and I'm obviously pro development. At the same time, I don't think the intent of the city is to build second stories on homes that originally were not built as second story homes. So if we can start building second story homes in Litchfield Park, I think I would love that as a developer, but I don't think that's what the intent is. And although I think it would fit with the adjacent property, I don't think that was the original intent of the original construction.
Well, the only reason I would disagree a little bit is because originally some of them were two-story, that there are a few two-stories sprinkled in there. It was the city that came and overlaid a single-story zoning on top of what was built in the 60s. So we've had these situations before where we've had setback questions where the city had overlaid a more stringent setback, where we've gone back to the original platting. And that's the only thing I would wish that we could keep in mind in the future is to keep some of those sunlight corridors in there if we get, and then also strictly enforce the height. I think it's at 25. We're still at 25. And as long as we keep that so that we're not just creating just places where nothing will ever grow and very little sunlight gets between houses, then I don't see an issue with allowing second story where some already exist.
May I add my 2 cents? Are you?
Yes, go
okay?
ahead. Go ahead, Commissioner Delby.
So the part where I'm struggling is there a special circumstance or condition? I mean, I agree with everything that all the other commissioners have said. But as Susan was speaking, I just was thinking, I guess maybe the special circumstance in this case is that it was developed at a time that was before the city became incorporated. I'm just wondering, I guess, if anybody has any thoughts on that being used as a special circumstance in this case to support an application.
That's kind of what we used to do with the setback things, that we would say that was, we used to have to grant a variance for every single one. even if they're building exactly in the same place where their existing house was, they're keeping the same setback. They had to get a variance to do that. And that, I think that's what we used, was that the city overlaid zoning on top of something that was pre-existing. So that's where we say it was not done by the owner and it was kind of a special circumstance.
Jason, could you bring up page 16 of 22 on the agenda packet?
I don't have the agenda packet open. I'm using the actual packet from the applicant. What is the exhibit that you'd like me to pull up, and I'll see what I can do.
It's the aerial view, and there's a red box, and then he's pointed to all the existing two-story homes. Yeah, there we go. So when I look at the intent to me is all the second stories were built on half the size lot that the subject property is on. So it's not like that was, so those were clearly built together as a cluster.
But I think that they have pointed out that there are some homes that are on that sort of not half-size lot side that are also second story, that exist like in those, 4 streets over there. So I know, like, right next to him, I agree with you, those are kind of like half-size lots, are clearly kind of different, or a different type of property. But I guess if there are other properties that maybe got it approved originally when they were originally built to have second story sprinkled in there on those 4 streets, it seems like there is the consistency of the neighborhood would be kept, I think.
If I may, board member Dudley, it's possible that if the home had been originally built as a single story, that they could have built the second floor prior to incorporation, but after the date of construction of the home, because they were able to, up until the time the zoning restricted single level and kind of locked them in time. So I think I see where you're going in that aspect. I'm just advising that can be how it had been approved, is that those second floor additions on those homes, if they weren't originally built that way, could have been pulled, they could have just pulled a permit before that zoning overlay went into place. So the only second thing I would add to it, and I don't know if maybe Pam could comment or anybody else from understanding precedent standpoint, there's one idea that someone could have pulled a permit in 1986 and built the second floor. Second would be, do we grant a variance specifically to allow a second floor addition in the park, where there's a great majority of housing stock that has a single level restriction on it. And if I was at 500 Old Litchfield Road and I wanted to build a second floor on my house and I was looking for a precedent, would there be any connection between the two? And I think that's the one thing we get concerned about, is that, again, we have granted variances for side yard setbacks in our history, but I haven't processed one for a second floor addition, and I appreciate all the dialogue. It helps staff understand the perspective of the board members of justification statements to go as far as to allow variance for a second floor addition in the park. And it starts to speak to, are we looking at thinking that the single story restriction has a purpose anyways, or would we just be considering variances for second floors here or there? Or if I, had a home on Old Litchfield Road that was on an estate sized lot and I really wanted to build a 12,000 square foot home and I wanted to do a second floor, could I do a variance?
That's part of my reluctance to do a variance going from single to 2. It is just that we do kind of establish precedent, but I think we only establish precedent in the neighborhood.
Yeah, they're specifically zoned as something, right? Like, aren't these houses kind of specifically, I forgot what they're zoned as, but isn't it pretty unique to just those properties?
It could be original zoning. A lot of these homes were annexed into the city as they were, and they all have varying zoning from Maricopa County, 40, 50 years ago. I can't say I know all the history on the zoning cases and what zone what, but that was just the initial concern. I think if we're coming back and saying, hey, they didn't have the restriction once upon a time, and then the city imposed that restriction, is the tool to relieve them of this, the variance process, or should we look at the restriction in the first place? Or is there something special about this lot that says, you know what, they have a hardship here because there's something special about the lot? But I'll leave it at that. I don't want to provide too much dialogue. I just wanted to kind of give you a better understanding of where we initially came from. That doesn't mean it can't be wrong. I'm struggling with it from the staff perspective.
Do we have a picture or one of the homes identified that's on the wider lot with the second story?
I can toggle back to the screen view and go down the street if that works for you.
Susan, while he's looking, as you know, we have a number of 2 stories over there off of Tainer Drive and over by the Mormon church. Those condos are quite a few of them are 2 stories. The 2-story, the way I understood it when we first came here was there were no 2 stories allowed north of Indian School, which is now Wigwam Boulevard, up until you got onto backing up to Camelback. And otherwise, all the homes from Indian School to Campina were all 1-story homes. Now, south of Indian School, there was some 1- and 2-story homes. Then when I developed or got involved at the peninsula over there, I live in a 2-story. We have a number of 2 stories here. And some of them we've taken 1 story and added the 2nd floor. I've done that to 4 of them. So it's not, there seemingly nothing necessarily set in stone, but I would say that going north of Wigwam Boulevard up to Campina, it's going to be a real struggle to get my vote to approve a 2-story anywhere along there.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah, Bob Derry. On Old Litchfield Road, due west of the proposed location, didn't 2 people within the last year, a year and a half, put 2 stories on in the same little section? And I was shocked when I saw the first one, and then I see next door, 2 doors over, they're putting another one up. How was that zoned, or how did that get to for the approval process? John, you know about those?
No, I sure don't, Bob. You're saying tell me again where it is.
Well, go west of this proposed house. I'm looking at the 268 Laguna Drive West blue map that shows the lake, and then you see the outline. And then you go west towards the words Old Litchfield Road and go up about 2, 3, 4, 5 houses in there. And 2 went up in the last year and a half because when the first one started, when I saw they were remodeling, and then all of a sudden I saw standing the 2nd floor, and I thought, well, that's interesting that, this whole section is probably going to turn, with a lot of those 2 stories. And so that's why tonight I see this, and I'm just, wondering why, those may have gotten in under a different rule. I mean, it's not like they were done 10 years ago. It was done, last year and a half.
And you're talking about Old Litchfield Road.
Yeah, on the east side of Old Litchfield Road.
If I may, was that livable square foot, or I thought that we had a couple of packages that were just, they added like kind of tall porticos or whatever, like entries.
I'm not sure. I just driving by, I never stopped to walk in. It certainly looked like a full 2nd floor like this is being proposed, but I can't say for sure.
Well, there are at least 2 on Old Litchfield Road on the east side that have been there a very long time, that are visible as you drive up and down Old Litchfield Road. But I think are we at a point now where we have a very long, we still have, our other board that we need to get to as well. So I think we're at a point now where maybe we need to make a motion or decide what we're going to do. Is there someone is there someone, are there any further comments from any of the commissioners? I mean, we need to, because we need at some point here to close the hearing and then move on to deliberation.
Excuse me, Chair, we need, for additional public comments, I just want to note, there was an email in your packet from a homeowner in the neighborhood that was encouraged board members not to grant the variance. Plans are afoot for a huge downtown growth. It's only natural our sense of village will be quickly fading. Let's not hasten the process by adding onto residences where it wasn't meant to be added. And that's from Mark Compton.
Right, I was curious because it didn't provide the address, so I went on the assessor's site to see where the gentleman lives. He lives on Laguna South, a block over. So what we're proposing, I don't think is visible. His property faces the lake and he's a block over. I don't think this one was going to be visible from his property. So I'm only making that comment for just perspective that he's not next door, nor is he across the street to the one we're considering.
I think we had one of the neighbors at the meeting. I'm not sure if he wishes to speak. He hasn't indicated that he did.
Hi, I'm one of the neighbors. I'm not the one that Mr. Rosano was talking about, but I am the one that lives adjacent directly 278, the townhouse, and we fully support to live on, simply because it wouldn't be out of the ordinary, and there absolutely are other homes that are two-story. We are also a young family that want to stay in this area, and we know that it's just going to make the area look a lot nicer too, and you know, it's just to help their growing family, and we have absolutely no problem with them. Sorry, my baby. Building up their home.
Okay, thank you.
If I
any other
might,
questions or comments?
yes.
Whoever just spoke, I need to have your name, please, first.
Oh, no
Jeannie Stewart.
problem. Oh, Hannah Coleman.
No, the first person. I'm sorry, say it again.
My name is Hannah Coleman. Hannah Coleman, Coleman.
Okay, thank you. And do we have another person wishing to speak? Do we have someone?
Yes, please. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Jeannie Stewart. Mark and Jeannie Stewart. We live 3 houses south. We are in a 2-story. And so we're the second house from the lake. We originally were a 2-story. Go left to the little silver Tacoma, right there, the second house. Right there with the silver truck. Directly behind us, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, if you go to the corner of Laguna Drive West and Laguna Drive South, that home was not a 2-story home. And they built on, I haven't been in their home, but they built on either 1 or 2 bedrooms and a bath. And that's been within the last 10, 15 years. It was a single story. And if you want to move the map, it's on the corner of south and west of Laguna Drive. So it'd be directly across the street. Yeah, right there on the corner of Laguna Drive South, like the corner lot right there. Right, where the 2 white cars are. Yeah, to the left, the silver right there. You can see where those 2 awnings are up there. That was, they built on additionally to the back. So it would be back of the south and then directly on Laguna Drive West, maybe 10, 15 years ago. And that was a young family that had, you can see up behind the trees there is what they built on. They had same thing, a young family. They had growth in their family. They had a new baby. And so they built on up there for a new baby. And these are young families, you know, I'm 60 in 3 days. We've got young families coming in. I went to elementary there. I went to high school there. I love the new families that are starting. They're progressive. They're good for Litchfield Park. They're clean. They're not renters coming and going constantly. This is a family that wants to raise their children around us, and they would be in line there. It's not like all the 2 stories stopped and then a few houses down there was another 2-story. There, just to the south of them, is a 2-story. So this 2-story would be aesthetically good looking. It isn't blocking anything that our other 2 stories are blocking. Directly behind them, I heard another gentleman, I'm not sure which one it was, I think it was Romac, but there is a new build and they have gone up a 2nd story. And it's either directly behind them on Old Litchfield Road or just to the north. And it's still under construction, but it was not that high of a building and it's under construction now. So that's from a neighbor 3 houses down. This is a nice young couple trying to raise their children. We obviously have grands and greats in our lifestyle. And I just want to say kudos to any young person that wants to stay in Litchfield Park and build it up, make it fresher, newer, a remodel, anything to update our park. And I grew up here. I could throw stones at my neighbor's houses that I used to go to at lunch from Litchfield Elementary. I think this is a positive, and I think that although I'm vintage and I love history and I love old things, I have all antiques, but we also need to look at progression within Litchfield Park, and I think this is a step towards it.
I would also
Okay,
like
thank you.
I'd also like to add to what Jeannie said. My husband and I, our master bedroom was actually added on when we talked to the original owners before we bought this house almost 3 years ago. They added the master bedroom that we stay in 1990 or 91. But again, it has just helped with our growing family too. And I am also a Litchfield Park native, lived on Desert, went to the school, Litchfield Elementary, Western Sky. I'm also a teacher at Litchfield. So again, it's just adding to this wonderful neighborhood, and updating is just going to help all the surrounding homes around us, their values.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any other comments from the commissioners or anyone in the audience?
Yes, I'm sorry. I have another comment, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. So I just want to make sure I understand the position of Mr. Romac and Mrs. Tarneski, just because they've had so much they have more history than I do. Are you guys thinking that within the scope of, call it Sagebrush, Old Litchfield Road, Laguna, over to, I can't see what that street's called, but in that kind of square, being that there's 2nd stories in that little square of homes, that you think in that square specifically, setting a precedence going to a 2nd story just in that area versus anywhere else in the park?
I think that setting precedent, it might set precedent for just this area, this development of these small homes. I don't think it'll carry into any other neighborhood, because these are very unique kind of patio style homes. And again, it's one of the places where the city overlaid, I think, on top of what was initially built or intended. I think mostly it was ended up mostly 1 story, because that's all anyone needed back then. So that's my opinion. I don't think it would set a precedent for single family in any other neighborhood. think that's gonna have to come, if those come up, they'll have to be dealt with on an individual basis, so.
John, anything?
Well, we don't live back. I don't see myself as living back in the 60s and 70s when a lot of this stuff was developed. I want to try to be a part of what's going on currently, and a big part. And Brian, as you know, because you're involved in it, the community is changing and it's improving on a daily basis. Well, part of that improvement is I'd love to see all of these 20 and 40-yard dumpsters, because that means that something's going on. People are changing, they're improving their properties. And a lot of improvement is happening right now in Litchfield Park. Another part of the beauty of the community is we have all different socioeconomic levels. It's not the Pebble Creeks that everybody is made out of the same pattern. We're all a little different and bring a little more interest to the table. I just think that to see this kind of thing, it's not out of place by any means, that we approve a 2-story next door to an existing 2-story. That's all. So I would encourage this kind of development. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment.
Yeah, while we're all commenting, I'm just going to indicate for the record that I agree with Mr. Romack. That particular neighborhood down by the lake, there was a period of time not all that long ago, particularly back with the last big crash, where there were a lot of homeowners in that neighborhood that were in trouble financially. And when you drive through the neighborhood now, it is a very different looking place than it was just 10 years ago. There's a lot more improvement going on. There's other things happening. And all of that it's good for the neighborhood. And like Mr. Romack says, it's good for the entire city. And there are a number of areas around that there are 2 stories, even north of Wigwam, up in the La Hacienda townhomes area, there are 2 stories over there. So when I was just curious, because driving through that, there are a number of 2 stories that are very similar to what the applicant wants to do. So I think I'm in agreement with Mr. Romack and Ms. Charnetsky on their comments. So in any event, are there any other comments from any of the other commissioners? If not, I'd like to see a motion to close the public hearing, and then we can move on to deliberation.
One last question. Just wondering if Mr. Sanks's position has changed at all based off of our dialogue.
Board members, I think the commentary from all the neighbors is great. I love that they're collectively caring for one another, looking out for each other. I just keep getting hung up on the issue of the approach, and that is if the single-story restriction just simply doesn't apply to this neighborhood any longer, then we shouldn't be using the variance process to take relief from it. We should just fix the code. But if it's in the instance that you believe strongly enough that you can make the findings A through A, B, C, and D, then certainly by all means use the variance tool to do it if the conditions are reasonably met. But I would suggest too, is if the idea is like we keep talking about this larger vision of the park, how we've changed, we're not who we used to be anymore, and these rules don't apply anymore, then we should look at doing a more comprehensive approach to it at some point in time. But that's all I've got to say about it, is that I think that certainly the plans look nice and the proposal looks attractive. I just was coming down to A, B, C, and D is all.
Yeah, I think we did change the zoning, or we changed some of the administrative rules for those setback things. So I think maybe that is something to take up in the zoning for this neighborhood, to consider allowing expansion to the 2nd story to a height limitation, as long as it stays flat roofed and low as it is, maybe that's something to take up. But in this particular application, it takes a long time to get the zoning code changed. So
Yeah.
to take the case, I think I can find a special circumstances that a zoning that overlaid a pre-existing community or pre-existing neighborhood.
So in other words, the policy aspect on this would be more related to certainly not exceeding what was initially established on the property in terms of development standards. It's not like a wide open variance,
Yeah.
checkbook. It's like, well, preserving, going back to where they were. Got it. That makes sense to us.
Is there any room for an additional comment?
Speaking
Hello?
right now. Who's talking right now?
Douglas Allen. I am the
Okay.
neighbor that lives directly south, 258 Laguna Drive West.
Okay, sir, go ahead.
I am not, opposed to this in any way. I think it's great that they have this opportunity. My concern is about the zero property line, and I know they're staying away from it, but if people start building up on that line, that does create a serious, almost like a canyon effect there, and then it also creates for the neighbor to the zero side of that line, it creates a maintenance issue that is, onerous, I would say. You can see that there are some houses with second stories where that's not been really kept up. So, like I said, I'm not opposing this variance in any way. I'm just saying that this is to me, it was a concern. That's why I went over and talked to Ross about it. And I think that if you're going to think about, making a general zoning change in there, that should really be taken into consideration. That's all I wanted to say about it.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, at this point, I think we should close the public hearing. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Make a motion. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. We now move on to the next item, which is deliberation of this variance request. Are there any further comments? Okay, hearing none, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the variance to allow a second story up to the maximum height of the other 2 stories in the neighborhood.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second to approve the variance to not to exceed the 2 stories. Now, are we also going to put some language in there? He's indicated that what he plans to build, he's going to stay out of the zero lot line area, and I think that's on his application. I'm not quite sure how we should state that, but I think that ought to be included in the record that that the variance, if approved, would be as submitted on his drawings.
As well as a square footage coverage on that second story too, correct? I'd imagine there's a percentage that,
I think he said he was taking up like leaving 1/3 a single story.
Right. I think that's what he did say. And he was going to stay away from the 0 lot line side.
If I may, Chair and board members, you could, as typical, you could tie, although not specific yet, and the recommendation from staff, because it was a recommendation to deny, you could recommend approval of the variance subject to the site plan and elevations provided by the applicant, which clearly it shows the addition on the, I guess, the southern portion of the home where it's away from the 0 lot line with the neighbor here. Now, it's up to you, but I mean, we have the exhibit in the packet. So if your interest was to tie it, you can tie it to the exhibit in the packet.
Right. I agree. And Ms. Charnetsky, was that your intent with your motion?
In my motion to include the examples of the drawings given with the application.
Okay. And Mr. Romack, did you still second?
I would amend my second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve the variance request as submitted on the various drawings. At this point, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, it carries. So moving on now, we have finished that. Our last item is approval of the minutes of the August 6, 2020 meeting.
I move to approve the minutes for the August 6, 2020 meeting.
Second.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. The minutes are approved. At this point, then we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A motion, is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to.
can I say
adjourn-
one thing, Mr. Chairman?
Okay,
I just wanted to thank everybody, all the participants for their, to take the time to mention their stances. I appreciate everybody on the commission as well. It took way longer than I think we all wanted, but I think it's important, and I appreciate that everybody, gave their utmost, attention and detail to it. So, thank you.
I would like to second that. I appreciate everyone's time.
all right, thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn the Board of Adjustment. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Charnetsky to chair our next meeting, which is, we're now moving on to Design Review Board.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna pull up my agenda here. Sorry about that. Really slow. Hey, Jason, can pull up the agenda. Mine's going really slow.
Sure, I can pull it up. Just give me 1 second. I have it here. Give me 1 second.
Got it. Okay. So we'll go ahead and call to order this Design Review Board meeting for the City of Litchfield Park. Again, I think as Dave did, we'll just go ahead and skip by the Pledge of Allegiance and move on to business. And the first item of business, I actually have to recuse myself from. So Dave, would you take over for item A for me?
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Item A is design plans for an addition exterior remodel proposed for 613 Old Litchfield Road. Is there a staff report?
So I think Acting Chair Design Review Board members. All right, I was just toggling back from the agenda. As a matter of business, if I may ask, would it be helpful if I brought the agenda up as a regular habit during the beginning of the meeting? Electronically, guys, I'm just curious, would you like that next time? Maybe? Okay.
I'm co-browsing with it, so it doesn't matter to me.
Okay, cool. All right, thank you. So I'll go ahead and toggle over. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the Design Review Board staff report, and we'll kind of follow along if you don't mind. 1 second. Here we go. Great. All right. So the request for 613 North Old Litchfield Road. I may recall we had a request similar to last month for a new 4-car garage on one of the oldest large estate-sized lots. The applicant for this request is seeking approval for the new 4-car garage and an additional living area. So if you look at the home, you can clearly see the garage door face on the left. There's a double-car garage and 2 singles. What you can't quite tell from this is the geometry of the lot. The home is set back a significant distance from Old Litchfield Road, and it kind of wraps in a curve around the circular drive that accesses, the north and south portions of the lot. The new garage adds a good chunk of new square footage, but there's a lot of livable square footage that's added in addition to this kind of northern portion of the property. I think if you refer to your old packet, you'll see it, but the overall footprint of the home will increase by over 2,000 square feet. So it's a relatively large addition to the home. It's consistent with what we've done recently on Old Litchfield Road as these estate-sized homes grow and accommodate more contemporary needs of the residents and the homeowners there, where they often have multiple vehicles. And generally, we've been supportive of the requests. Colors, materials, architecture clearly needs to match the architecture of the home. A lot of these homes have faced significant renovations to make them, more contemporary. And this being another example, I think that so far staff has found that it will add value to residents in the overall neighborhood, and we're supporting the application.
Okay. Is the applicant here?
I am here, yes. Let me get my video turned on.
Okay, sir, would you state your name for our record, please?
Sure, my name is Todd Smith.
All right. Mr. Smith, you've heard the staff report. Do you have comments that you would like to add to the discussion?
No, well, I certainly appreciate the consideration. What we're doing as far as the reconfiguration of the garage is to add the livable square footage that was mentioned in order to have a media center and a gym in the back, which will be behind the property. And so we put a lot, there it is there. We put a lot of effort into making sure that the front aesthetic matches what we currently have from a height perspective, and the way, now you can see the way the property wraps around that driveway. And same thing on the back. So, but that's pretty much our goal with the renovation.
Okay. Do any of the commissioners have questions for the applicant or questions for Mr. Sanks? Okay. Here I'm hearing no questions unless everybody got muted involuntarily. In that event, is there a motion someone would like to make?
Sure, I'd like to move that we approve the application. What is it? What's the address? On 613 North Old Litchfield Road, and approve it as staff has recommended.
I would second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Nay. No opposition, so it's been approved. Thank you. And our next item is B, but I think, is Ms. Charnetsky still there? Are you back? I'll surrender your all authority back to you. There we go.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to item B, design plans for an addition, exterior remodel proposed for 765 Villanueva. And Jason, do you have a review for that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Welcome back. The applicant for the project seeking approval to refinish the exterior of their home. And primarily, the largest construction on this will be to raise the living room ceiling and add a new porch and entry to the front of the mid-century modern-ish residence. Important to know, there's really only about 300 square feet of additional building area that we can see from the building plans. But as you can tell from the elevation sheet, there's going to be more integrated entry cover, if you can see here, that will carry across rather than the kind of different the trellis here. And then the center of the home is going to pop up and provide, I presume, like a clearer height ceiling on the inside. I'm sure the applicant can explain that a little bit further, but it'll give the home a somewhat fresher appearance. It'll help break the roof line a little bit further. And overall, I mean, based on the exhibits that were provided, it appears to be a nice refresh for the home's exterior. I don't know, they can maybe also clarify the one thing that kind of popped up in the elevations were the solar panels. I'm not sure how long they've been there or what's going on, but typically when we get the solar panel requests, we're careful and we're mindful to make sure the solar panels conform with our code and that we don't see so much of the exposed underneath of them. Usually we'll look at line of sight on a flat roof. In this case, there are no parapets. It's truly flat. Anyways, I don't know if they're replacing them, if they're still there, if they're just gonna not touch them or how that's gonna work out. But again, I can defer to the applicant on that. It's not a part of this application. It's just something that came up in the exhibits that they provided and raised the question. So the request for the remodel and a small addition, staff certainly supports it, and for the exhibits provided in your packet.
If I recall, those solar panels have been there for many, many years, or long before this, probably the current owner, and probably before the city had adopted our rules, so to speak. So that could explain part of it. So is the owner applicant here present online?
Madam Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
Regarding those solar panels, that's hot water for the pool. It's not solar. I mean, it's not generating electricity. It's just generating hot water. And I do know that those are to be removed. That's part of the project.
Okay. Is the applicant online?
He is present. He has his hand up. Is he muted? He's unmuted.
Would you like to?
Mr. Conklin, do you wish? We can't hear you.
Is able to unmute.
We're seeing if we can help at all.
While we're waiting for the applicant, do any of the board members have any commentary, questions to bring up?
Yeah, I would just like to bring up that basically they have expressed that they need a new kitchen, and in doing that, they're looking at just literally kitchen, family room, that whole middle of the house and then raising up the roof to make it all at a single 10-foot height. And it's, again, we're back to the same thing. It won't it be nice to see a dumpster in front of this house that they're remodeling it and bringing it up to more current standards. And I encourage that. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think the drawings look very nice in keeping with the existing style, but enhancing it a bit by changing some of the roof lines. So make it a little bit more variable. I think it'll look nice.
So can I ask a question? Where it is raised up, is the intent then to match that existing brick? Does anybody, was it in the packet?
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. It was referring to my settings. I apologize. Yes, and going back to previous point, and I apologize for the technical difficulties again, but yes, part of the intention to rebuild this roof is we have some significant damage in one spot, and in the reconstruction of the roof, the solar water heaters for the pool, we are anxiously ready to remove those, as they are an eyesore to my wife and I as well. So those would be removed at the same time of the remodel.
Thank you. And then the other question was if you're going to try to match the brick when you raise up the center section.
That is the intent.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Are there any other questions for the staff or for the applicant? And if not, would someone like to make a motion?
Sure, I move that we approve this application. That I agree with Mr. Romack that it's going to be an awesome addition to the park. For address, let's see, what's our address here?
765.
765 Villanueva, and again, based off of the recommendations of staff.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Can I have a second? John seconds.
Yep.
So any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, the motion carries. It's approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move forward with item C on the agenda. I can find it. Design plans for an addition exterior remodel proposed for 401 East Fairway Drive. Jason, can you give your review on that?
Julie Chair, thank you, board members of the public. The 401 East Fairway Drive application is for an exterior remodel and a new covered patio addition on the rear, side rear of the home. The revised front elevations show that if you look at the keystone corners and some other design aspects of the home, those are going to be revised with this application. You can see, if you look carefully, there's an arched doorway proposed. There's this the stone veneer, I believe. I'm not sure if it's going to stay the same or if they're revising it, but they do show it on the elevations. You can see there's been a minor change in the roof line. I presume is on purpose, as shown here. But there's numerous changes to the exterior of the home to give it a fresh appearance. I don't see the keystones over here. I could be wrong. The chair would correct me on my architectural vernacular. I think they're called keystones. I don't know. Something like that. It's the the kind of the stucco pop-out treatments we've seen kind of come around every few architectural cycles as a way to enhance the home. Those are now coming off. The patio expansion, it's in your packet. It's really on the rear of the home. It appears to be an addition to the home to give the homeowners an opportunity to really enjoy their pool area that they've got. Other than that, I'm not sure if the trampoline is still in the front yard. It's not part of the application, but it does look, aside from that, from what the exterior remodel is going to be, like a nice enhancement to the home, increase the value of the home and improve the surrounding neighborhood. So staff is supportive of the application for the refresh and remodel of the patio addition.
Yes, I'd like to point out, I'm really happy this property is going back to a single kitchen too. I think there's two small kitchens, and it was kind of contentious before in past applications and actions with the city. So it's good to see this is going to go back to kind of more neighborhood standards. Is the applicant present? Want to say anything about your project?
I am here. My name is Mike Procco, and we just recently purchased this home. We are looking to do a complete remodel in there. What's going on with the roof right now, it's two different structures that they put, two separate roofs together. There's an air conditioning on the roof on the back side that's coming off and going back down on the ground. But we're looking to make it one house again instead of two houses. But yeah, get rid of the two kitchens and come back to one kitchen.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I think it looks attractive and very fitting for the neighborhood.
And we've been asked not to have a trampoline in the front yard.
Your insurance agent might appreciate that too. Okay, any other questions or for the staff or for the applicant?
Yeah, I have a question. It's not really pertinent, just curious if you're planning to close off the yard, like there's that backyard kind of driveway to the backyard. I'm wondering if you're planning to close that off.
Yeah, we want to, and I want to get rid of a lot of that concrete that's back there. I'm not a big fan of the concrete jungle they have building back there. But the fence line, I'd like to take the fence line down to where it crosses that driveway and then put a rolling gate right there so that we still have access to it. But it closes off and secures that backyard, especially having that pool there. I don't like having it where people can get back there without going through a more sturdy fence and gate to get into that little, the smaller pool gate.
Yeah. And to Jason's question, are you replacing the stone on the bottom?
It'll be a different stone and just a neutral stone that's here. And I think we provided a sample of about what it'll look like, something along those lines, to put it up there.
Yeah, the color samples are in the packet. I think they'll look nice.
Right.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Would someone like to propose a motion?
Yeah, I'll move we approve the application as submitted, as recommended by staff, subject to exhibits provided by the applicant.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. The motion has passed. Okay, so we'll move on to item D, design plans for an addition, exterior remodel proposed for 525 East Cercado Lane. Jason, you want to give your review on this one?
Thank you, Chair, board members. Exterior remodel, livable area, new covered patio addition for 525 East Cercado Lane. The exhibits are detailed in your packet. As usual with the report, I've taken some snippets of the Google Street View as well as the proposed building elevation, so you can kind of see the side by side or the above and below, if you will, in the report. You can see there's going to be quite a bit of changes. Looks like they're trying to add some prominence to the entry or perhaps even lift the whole roof structure up. I'm not 100% certain, but there's a lot going on in terms of changes from what you see existing to proposed. Now there is an addition on the left side of the home. You can see the lower elevation that the proposed front extends further to, I guess if you will, the left. I'm not sure of my directions at the moment, but there's a lot of changes, a lot of good changes. It's going to be a lot of additional livable area. This totally changed architectural kind of vernacular of the home, if you will. It's already an attractive home. It's just a big change. There's also interesting stuff going on in the backyard. You can see in the site plan in your packet. There's a large shade ramada, presumably to help enjoy the rear yard. It's detached. And we look over the pool area, and it is under the 500 square foot maximum for an accessory structure, so that's fine. Meets the setback requirements. So in any case, it's, you know, I think it's a change in taste and preference by the homeowner. Staff's supportive of the application. It's adding value to the home and the neighborhood, and we recommend approval subject to the exhibits.
Okay. Is the applicant here to speak for the project?
Yeah, I'm here, Stephen Houtman.
Okay. Is there anything you would like to tell us about your project? Maybe explain it, your intentions, and.
I mean, Jason pretty much covered it, but we're attaching the main house to, we have a casita in the back, and we're attaching that, adding another bedroom, kind of reworking some of the insides, bathrooms, and then putting a ramada in the back. And then also I had a little garden project in the back, just sort of improving the house.
Okay. Any questions from the board members for the staff or the applicant?
I would have one question. Lot coverage, is that brought up here? Oh yeah, 30%. Okay, you're good.
Okay.
If I may, board member, I thought I heard the owner say that the ramada was attached to the house, and I may have misread the site plan. I thought the ramada was detailed. It looks like there's a gap there.
That gray square in the top right is attaching to the guest house right below it.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's already attached by the porch, but basically we're connecting the main house so that you can walk into that. I mean, that current casita would become the master bedroom kind of retreat. And then, yeah, the ramada is separate. It's not attached to the house.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I hadn't misspoke. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? And thought I saw colors. There's only one thing that kind of was the one with a lot of sky and very, very, very white. Is that, I don't know if you put in any color samples.
Sorry if I'm making you dizzy, everybody. I was just trying to scroll to the materials sheet if I can get to it. There's a lot of exhibits.
There's like a
I would keep it, you know, I wouldn't have a high light reflecting number, probably like 85 or less. I don't want a glowing white house. So
it looked like it was floating in the clouds. So there's that one color rendering, computer rendering or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's more the computer.
Oh, you're referring to in the beginning of the packet, don't you?
Yeah, the first page of the drawings there.
Sorry, there you go.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, that's white.
It's not going to be crazy white like that.
Okay, good. And then the trim, I'm guessing, are going to be dark brown or in that neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And is it stucco? Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Are there any other questions for the applicant or for staff? Looks like it's going to be a challenging big project. So good.
Oh, I just want to, can I ask real quick, from the elevations, I'm having a hard time. So it looks like actually though the roof line is, the left side of the front elevation is becoming pitched, and then the center part where it already is pitched is being raised. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So I'm 6'3". You know, the current left section there is all like 8-foot ceilings inside. So raise the roofs in there and the inside of the house. So make that all pitched and then just raise the family room section, the main living area there, raise that up as well.
So the only roof section really is the garage that's staying the same?
Yes.
Okay. And are you restuccoing over the existing garage, I'm guessing, so that it all matches?
Yeah, the whole house would match, restucco everything.
If I may, are you deleting the window that was in the garage or whatever that was over there? Or is it just missing off of here?
Yeah, I think it would be reshaped. That'd be a pantry, kind of just like a little square. I think the old drawing had like these long skinny windows, but that's not actually what's there. Oh yeah, there. That's what's there right there. So that's my garage, but it would be like a little walk-in pantry. It would be a little smaller. Or I might just, I'm not sure. I think I'm kind of thinking no window, but I might just put a smaller window.
Okay. I think Jason brings it because then it's like one blank wall that.
So, and then
I mean, I could put a smaller window. I mean, I've got my bougainvillea in this picture. It doesn't look very good. This is when I first bought the house. The grass looks terrible in this picture. But like that whole wall is kind of like bougainvilleas are growing up on it with the flowers.
Yeah.
Well, no, you don't have a trampoline, so.
Yeah. Yeah, no trampoline.
So I wanted to ask also then if the from the front elevation, it's hard to tell kind of like the depth when you're standing in front of the house, but it looks like maybe the garage then might kind of like that kind of blockiness of the garage may stick out. Like, is that the farthest, the closest thing to you if you're standing in front of the house?
It would be like the tower in the middle. That would be kind of like where the lights are right now. Like the tower would be up in the front.
Okay.
I mean, basically that whole, so I tried to break it up on the left because I'm expanding and adding another room. So I have like kind of pop outs, those like where those two windows are on the left side. So it would kind of go in and out to try to break up, like just not have a huge flat wall, if that makes sense.
You're not really adding on. The garage is kind of those walls are where they are.
Yes, correct.
And then you're just adding like a portico in the center, which will come out about the same as the garage, or
it would actually kind of push in, I guess, because it's built like on the property line, so I can't come forward with it. So like that middle section would kind of push in and kind of create the look of like different elevations of popping in and out.
Yeah.
Sharon, would you like me to scroll to the floor plan or?
I've got it. I've got it. If anyone else needs to look at it. So because the existing front porch goes in quite a bit, so you're bringing it out. You're bringing the house out closer towards the street.
No, I'm not. I don't really have any space to bring it out. I'm just working with what I've got. So the garage would stay, yeah, there, like this view here. Okay. So like it would pop in a little bit on the bottom left there, and then there'd be a window. So that would be like a little covered, and then it'd go out again and then pop in again. The porch would just sort of it's currently right there. It wouldn't be extended, the front porch.
Up in the center, you're just going up, basically. You're not coming out.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? So I'm just looking, any other materials on the front we need to look at? The roof material?
It would be similar to what it currently is, the tile type roof.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? Would someone like to propose a motion?
I'll propose a motion that we approve the package on 525 East Cercado Lane, subject to the exhibits and staff report.
Second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay. And now we're on to item E, design plans for an addition exterior of proposed 230 East Cercado Lane. And Jason, do you have a staff report for this one? This is the one we just gave the variance to, is that correct?
Yes, Chair, that's correct. So this is the piggyback, if you will, of the design review board request. Again, this item was brought before you just under 2 months ago at the August 6th design review board meeting. And at that time, it was reviewed and more or less continued because of the variance and other issues regarding the exhibits. So as presented earlier tonight on the other agenda, the applicant has now received approval to encroach into the side yard setback by 4 feet. And this is their design plans for a flat roof garage extension, kind of a 1.5 car, if you will, garage door for the garage extension you can see down here in the site plan. The standard conditions would apply. Staff is recommending approval that the colors and materials, to reiterate, will match those of the existing residents. And with so there's clarity in the future, and for any reason or any event, I did think that we should make the statement in condition 2 about the references to the kennel within the home, whatever you want to call it, in several exhibits in the packet and in the file. So in 10 years, if anything comes up and someone says we approved a kennel and our private residence, that it was clear that the intention of the design review board approval plans has nothing to do with a label of kennel. Again, it's not an allowed use in residential district unless they have one for the private use of pets, I guess. I'm not really certain what you'd have it for anyways. And without going any further on that, as I don't believe there's a proposed kennel at all, based on what the owner's dialogue was 2 months ago. I just wanted to make sure it was clear in case all of us aren't there to answer the question one day if it comes up. And other than that, I think it's pretty straightforward. You've seen the plans. It's a relatively minor addition to the residence, and that's it.
Okay. Is the applicant present?
Yes. BJ, are you here?
Sorry, yes, I'm still here.
It looks like on the application, any reference to kennel has been taken off, so.
Yeah, and again, referring back to the previous meeting we had a couple months ago, that was labeled that just to not call it a safe. So yeah. It's not a kennel.
Okay. All right. Is any other questions? I think we kind of reviewed the architecture last time and kind of understand the flat roof kind of echoes at the entry and then also on the other side of the house. Does anyone remember that or need refreshing on that, or have any questions for staff or applicant? Anybody? It's getting late.
Is anybody out there?
Yes, anybody there? Or if everyone's comfortable having seen it before, would someone like to propose a motion? We can.
I'd love to propose that we approve the application for 230 East Cercado Lane based off of the recommendations of staff.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Did we lose our quorum? I only heard 3, or saw 3. Are we all here?
I said aye.
Aye.
See
I
3.
said aye.
Four.
Oh, there's David. Okay. All right, so the ayes carry. Any opposed for the record? None. Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. And then the last item is design plans for an addition exterior remodel proposed for the Tierra Verde Downtown Center, located between Wigwam Boulevard and Honeysuckle on Old Litchfield Road. And we kind of saw this before, and I think staff had asked for some additional information. So Jason, do you want to go over your staff report for this one?
Certainly, thanks, Chair and board members. This is an exciting project to see a large expansion of the downtown center. Initially, there was a couple items all combined into one. It was for the TCBC Brewery. Really, we kind of settled that issue, as you may recall from last time, with the partial approval of the minor modification to existing building 3. Remember, they were doing some stuff over here to provide, I think, an outdoor patio for the beer garden or however they called it. But in that last report that staff presented to you on August 6th, we itemized out the ways in which the downtown center proposal met the intent of the city center development, if you will, and just kind of the expectations we have for the kind of zero lot line development, bring the buildings to the street, respect and enhance the architecture, provide pedestrian furnishings for comfort, provide street trees to give the thematic experience to continue along West Honeysuckle, not just leave it in over at Old Litchfield Road. And for the last 6 years, we've spent a lot of time focusing on what's going to happen across the street in the city center development and the property that the city controls. Even so we brought a lot of those concepts forward as items, as kind of a homework assignment, if you will, so that the developer of this expansion could take it to heart and hopefully come back to the board with a list of improvements that address the concerns that staff had. And by and large, they have. You know, you may recall that in the last iteration, if you don't mind me scrolling down, the gap that they want to fill in the development between the buildings has been replaced with, instead of doing the facade with the awnings out front, which kind of served as kind of a weird architectural break from what's occurring at the intersection over here, which looks a lot like what's proposed over here. Now you've got this continuous arcade colonnade type thing. Again, I'll let the chair correct me on my architectural vernacular. But it's got the arch spaces, it's got more quality materials and dressings. The tubular steel wrought iron, if you want to call it, tubular steel fencing has been enhanced with columns. They've got palms lining the landscape frontage along this back of sidewalk by the sidewalk in the street. So a lot of things have happened to really wrap the corner. And I said this in the past when we've talked about how will development, in my perception, ensue downtown, is that you think of it as a patchwork quilt, where all of the pieces don't have to be identical, but they're stitched together in a clean and orderly fashion, and it makes sense, and there's not gaps or tears in it. And this, I believe this application has sought to address that. So you'll see they've maintained the minimal, nearly 0 foot setback along West Honeysuckle as this building fills in the gap here. which is great. They got a little patio space going on, new commercial space. You go down and then you end up with this really broad shaded arcade, which is probably gonna be outdoor patio. Bringing life to the street, activity to the street. People want to go have dinner and, you know, be looky-loos at what's happening, just like you would in any downtown. That's what we're hoping for. And then, you know, one day on the other side of the street, those people will be hanging out, looking out their office windows, sitting outside at the patio, drinking coffee, looking at those people and just seeing what's going on in the downtown. And so we believe that this continuation of development is fulfilling that vision, even though it's not part of technically the city center zoning district that's across the street. So we're really pleased to see that. You know, we don't have long uninterrupted pauses in the streetscape. If you know, we've talked about windows and doors breaking the facade. We don't have long blank spaces of building. You've got storefronts, you know, people can walk by and see the merchandise that's in the window for sale, or see the people working in the agency office, or they're sitting outside having a coffee or a beer. So that whole facade is permeated by windows, doors, arches, and architectural treatments as desired for the downtown environment. You don't see parking proposed between the building and the street. You don't see the backside of a building. You don't see odd spaces. It's all active streetscape. So we're pretty excited to see that. I know it's light here on your when I bring it over into the Word document for your report, but you can see the landscaping, the palms, the concrete benches, and the decorative light fixtures all adding to the pedestrian experience, so that as you walk along, you can tell that the environment was meant for you to walk along and not necessarily drive past it at 45 miles an hour where you're trying to catch a glimpse of monument signs and buildings set back 100 feet. This is for the pedestrian. The only couple things I would note, just kind of a bit of a carryover from last time, is I would want to make sure that any of the light fixtures that are proposed along the downtown sidewalks are just specific to be reviewed and approved by the city's engineer, so we don't get kind of hodgepodge light pole things happening down there. I'm not 100% certain if there's an approved detail that the city will accept. I know that Woody Scouten is taking the lead from kind of a almost project manager style perspective for the city center's project and the city's initiatives for offsite improvements in the park space downtown. But I just want to be cognizant that we think about, okay, what lights do we want downtown? And do we want, you know, half a dozen different details on the same street, or do we want the same lanterns to occur beside streetlights? So this looks great. The benches are there. There's be a lot of things, a lot of places to rest and relax as you walk. Take a seat, wait for somebody to run into the store, those sorts of things. The other thing I wanted to point out is they don't show prospective sign banding on the building, and signage is required under separate permit anyhow. I'd be really careful early on to make sure that we're not putting internally illuminated bright LED wall signs on the wall like you'd see at CVS. This environment really, you know, needs to be carefully evaluated for signage. We really should try to do, it can be illuminated, but perhaps from an external source, you know, whether it's a gooseneck lantern that hangs over the sign and casts a little bit of light on the wall of the building and captures the sign that's not illuminated, that would be great. We just want to make sure we've got attractive village scale and construction type for signage, and giving these retailers and restaurateurs the identity and recognition that they need to be viable, but at the same time, taking a cautious approach to anything that would be too bright or garish on the sides of buildings that are, you know, really supposed to be oriented to the pedestrian and not to fast-moving vehicular traffic where they really need to jump at you and catch your attention to see it. So that's all I've got. Otherwise, they've really done quite a bit of work since the last time I saw it, and we're excited to see the project moving forward.
I'd just like to add, I think that's it looks like it's all part of the existing downtown, and it's like it could be the old Adobe, you know, that exists around the corner. So I think that if we kind of keep that flavor, I think that'll look really nice, and it'll kind of be a really good jumping off spot for the next phase of the city development. I think it looks really good. And then I think you're mentioning the lights and the signage. I think we talked years ago about some signage being allowed to be like backlit, so it was very subtle and kind of elegant. We've seen those kind of like for restaurants and other businesses that look very nice, and it's very low key lighting, but it does draw attention to it in an elegant way too, not just a painted on sign with a light bulb illuminating it. So that's another option I think we discussed before for the downtown, this in particular, this downtown area. So I think it looks good. Are we being asked to approve this design or for them to go ahead with development of this?
The chair, yes, my understanding is that the applicant revised their design review board application after the August 6th meeting, and they brought it back to the board for tonight's meeting for approval so they could proceed to permitting. I would add then, if the interest of the board is to expand a bit, the staff recommendation on item 2 related to wall signage, certainly if the board would like to submit or include a provision to allow halo illuminated signage, I don't know that you would have to amend the signage. You may want to, yeah, we probably change it. The whole goal is to not have like red, internally illuminated bright red letters, blue red letter, things like that. It's to have a more subdued lighting source for the signage, whether it's externally illuminated or halo illuminated. You can do that.
Excuse me, Chair. There is no comprehensive sign plan for this project, so it falls under signage allowed for neighborhood commercial. And I believe the back, I think we removed the ability to have those wall signs with the lit wall signs, and all that is allowed is the backlit signage.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Then I guess I'm a bit redundant with my restriction by condition. I was thinking, I had it in the back of my head already, I guess.
Just to remove.
I think we allowed, the community commercial is allowed the lit signage, but the neighborhood commercial is not, and this falls under neighborhood commercial.
Okay. Yeah, Brian.
You're muted. Sorry.
Sorry, can you hear me? Sorry about that. So I agree with you guys. I love this. I mean, this is going to be awesome. And my question for you is, was there any discussion to have the consistent palm trees and the like landscape they're adding to wrap around to the existing side, so there's some continuity there? And also, yeah, I would think that the signage and lighting, wouldn't we want that to be consistent with, again, the existing Litchfield Road side?
I would assume so, yeah.
Chair. So what we did is we went to the city center and we kind of just followed that model of what we could find online on what your intentions were there, and tried to carry that across that front facade. So that's that integration of the palms, the benches, and the lighting. At this point in time, we're totally wide open as far as spec. If you guys want to get with us on what you want those to look like, we'll totally follow suit as far as what you want. Yeah, we would love to have that run up Old Litchfield as well. My client and this property owner is definitely interested in investing money in the enhancement. And just to touch on one of the subjects that was mentioned earlier on, the intention on the inside finishes of these would be to carry still that exposed red brick, exposed timber, high ceilings, spiral duct, kind of the same thing that you see in Old Pueblo and some of the bars and stuff like that. He really loves that, coming from Canada, and just loves that trendy, urban, retro kind of stuff. So that's his intention, and the parameters he set on us for both design and construction on the interior finishes. So the outside will match the exterior of the smooth stucco synthetic, facade, and then the inside would mirror the same concepts of the existing center there.
Thank you. If I may, from a staff perspective and just informational interest, what are your plans for phasing of construction for both the for the site as shown in the exhibits?
So, Madam Chair, so what we'd like to propose is, with approval, we'd like to move into a CD process with you and start working through the design, in which then we could start honing in the fixtures, the benches, all that kind of stuff. But we would like to propose moving to construction documents on both buildings at this point in time, just because, as we mentioned, there's an interest and a heavy possibility of bringing in a fire sprinkler system into the existing structure to convert that to get some life safety put into the existing buildings. So tying those structures together give us the ability to run a single Class A system in with a single riser, and then make that whole U-shaped center under a single fire riser. So we would like to move forward with that, with the CDs, working in conjunction with the city, and see if we can get this thing permitted and break ground on it as fast as possible.
Madam Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Chuck.
I have a couple of questions. One, I understood that the brewery was going to be moving to the east. And you were going to they were going to cut in a window or a way to serve people out in that breezeway. Is that gone away?
Madam Chair, if I may, Commissioner Romack, no, that has not gone away. We have a demo permit at this point in time. We're waiting on some finalization from engineering to be able to submit our CD package for the construction on that. There's a meeting with the tenant, TCBC, and the structural engineers and myself on Monday, where we can hone in some final details on that, where we can have all the final engineering completed so we can submit it. At this point in time, the demo has been completed under the demo permit for the TCBC. So the slab's been pulled out. Everything's ready to go. As soon as we can get the construction document, then we'll move forward with putting all the new back in place. There's a lot of moving pieces that go with that, with moving TCBC over, then the martial arts studio moves out of their space along Old Litchfield and moves into the old TCBC. And then the gelato place would obviously go in the infill. So there's a lot of new leases, a lot of moving pieces where they're moving some people around, and potentially, another restaurant or two coming in as well.
Then to follow up, or sort of follow up with that, you are going to be infilling the driveway or alleyway that's in there. How,
yes, sir.
You're creating it, seemingly, you're creating a dead end in this parking lot. And it's going to become more and more difficult for any sort of delivery trucks, I would think, to get out of there, because you already have this telephone company that they're not going anywhere. And it seems to me that by filling that in, granted it's your property, and yeah, I assume so, but it's going to be, I think you're creating some problems that are going to need to be addressed.
Commissioner Romack, so what we did is, so there's three approaches that come in. Two come off of Wigwam Boulevard and one that access the back towards City Hall. We've maintained the 25-foot turning radius along the backside for fire truck access with that U-shaped parking that goes on the backside. So in filling that, and the placement of, and the sizing and square footage was all taken into place to maintain that turning radius. With the new building, it's not depicted on this floor plan, site plan necessarily. We're going to move the trash enclosure that's currently sitting at an angle behind the the old CrossFit space.
Right.
And it's going to be a direct pull in on the backside of the new infill spot. So you won't run into that hammerhead with that landscape island that's there. Correct. So with the design, then obviously new site plans will be submitted along with the design that will show that trash enclosure that'll move around there, which will then open up that turning radius. And we've met the exiting and egressing required for the parking spots with the three access points that are to the city streets at this point in time. So closing that off, We felt that it was protecting the pedestrians as far as with opening up and putting these new restaurants and drawing the public around the corner that currently it doesn't have the heavy foot traffic, because down that side, the Honeysuckle Street side, there's not a whole lot of foot traffic that goes back in there. But with the brewery, a potential gelato ice cream place going in the infill, and then the new restaurant on the corner, we were really concerned about vehicles pulling through that drive approach where it's a blind corner, because you have tall walls on both sides, and you literally, once you come past the building, your tires are sitting on the sidewalk. Just with having the pedestrian tying that all around and drawing the public up Honeysuckle, we really thought this was the correct way and the safest approach of stopping any potential, vehicle traffic turning in and onto sidewalks where kids and people will be going up and down that sidewalk.
I appreciate the explanation. But as soon as you said gelato, you had my vote.
Where John is that the little pinch between the existing telephone company, I think is like 60. It looks like 16 feet, but I don't know if that's the building or just the lot. And if there's any, that's pretty narrow.
Yeah, so that's a landscape. That's a landscape island right now, so that doesn't tie those two parking lots together.
Okay, so those two parking lots will continue to be separate. Then you won't be able to drive like a
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And we actually even talked about potentially closing that off altogether with putting the trash enclosure. That was the intention of maybe flip-flopping the door there on the backside and making the door closer to the existing trash enclosure and moving the trash enclosure over there and actually closing that off completely, which would truly isolate those two parking lots where you wouldn't have cross traffic walking through that back area.
Yeah.
I think you're creating a dead end, but I want to see development down there, so I'm going to vote.
Yeah, I think that, I guess delivery trucks can go in reverse too.
Yeah, try it sometime.
Yeah, I know, it's not fun. All right, well, any other comments from anybody? So what we're approving basically is the architecture, kind of excluding the landscape lighting and signage, maybe to be considered down the road, if not part of a new sign package, or other than that, it has to comply with the existing sign requirements.
If I may, board chair, are you saying the landscaping would not be included in
the light fixtures as you suggested?
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I caught landscaping. Yes, sure. Thank you.
I would just say, I guess, street lights or street lighting. I don't know how you want to refer to those.
Just the pathway lighting that runs up that side. So yeah, we could work with you guys as far as what you want, is doing a separate submittal for that elevation and what that looks like. We, if we can move forward with this, the construction documents on the structures themselves, we can, defer that to, and pull that part out of this and then do another submittal once we get maybe a little more collaboration with what you guys would like to see. And then we can propose a new landscape, at least on the facade side.
Okay. So you want to just exclude landscaping and just approve the architecture right now, and then we'll approve the landscape package later along with the lighting?
Madam Chair, maybe just the pathway landscaping, because I think you're going to want to probably see the landscape documents go in with the CDs for the structures themselves. Or I guess there really isn't any landscape, is there? Maybe just the islands across the front. Yeah. So yeah, if you want to exclude the landscaping, that would be fine.
Susan, aren't we just approving basically the site plan here?
I thought we were approving the architecture elevations.
Well, I think, will we get that with the CDs? I mean, I see we have it here, but it'll be included with the CDs when they submit those.
But they need for design approval. design review of the elevations before they proceed
Yeah.
with construction documents?
Who are you asking?
That's what I'm assuming we're here, is to approve the design before they go into construction documents.
I mean, if I may, Chair, I think that there's been the detail provided of the, as part of the design guidelines for the rest of the city center, we've adopted concepts of pedestrian furnishings such as these concrete benches. You got a 24-inch concrete planter. You've got landscaping shown here. I think it's all acceptable. And I don't have an issue with the lighting either. It's more so just ensuring we don't have a conflict of lighting details that just to make sure that Woody signs off on it in case he's got light detail, like light pole fixtures for the downtown area that are on the menu that we need to be looking at for, the type of lighting, I would just say everything looks good from a staff perspective, except for just ensuring the light pole fixtures are good with the city engineer. Even though they may be on site, it appears they're not truly street lights. So you don't just have a hodgepodge. You don't have a hodgepodge of like light temperature color, and you don't have a hodgepodge of light pole types and heights. Just have him sign off on it, because you know what I mean? Like you'll have blue lights and yellow lights, and you just want to make sure it all kind of goes together.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if you have a spec already, if Woody's working with a spec already on something for City Center, we'd love to follow suit with that as far as heights, colors, LED, lumens of fixtures, all, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. All right. Does anybody feel ready to make a motion? And do you understand we are approving the architectural design elevations and landscape, subject to final approval of a light fixture or lamp. And that's it. We're not approving any signs. Those would be submitted as either part of the previous zoning or some new package. Is that correct? Okay.
So moved.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Do you got that, Pam? Can you make a motion out of that?
Yeah.
Do you have a motion? Would someone like to second?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. You can choose John or Rachel.
Whoever.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it's all unanimous. Okay, the motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Okay, is there anything left on our agenda? I guess currently, is there anything urgent or we can continue it to the next one?
No, that's fine.
No.
Okay, a motion to adjourn then.
So move.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, thank you, we're adjourned.
Nice work, team. Nice work.
Yeah, good job.
Thanks for
Thanks,
being in there.
Thank you.
All right.
Long night. Thank you.